So like here's a quick example of a group that may want to create a staking program and a demultiplexer instance that automatically just buys their token, and any tokens that the demultiplexer instance sees that is their token just gets sent and rewarded to stakers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Midcurve. Today, we have a very special guest with us and a good friend, Tommy from Armada and Sci Options. And the first, weren't you the first winner of a Solana hackathon?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was. I've been building here for over 3 years, so
okay,
it's a long time.
So, and I would be remiss if I didn't introduce my beautiful co-host, Andrew, again with us today. Andrew, actually, are you feeling better now?
I mean, I've gone from like my throat produces a live oyster once every few hours. Now it's just like a small clam, but we're not 100% yet, but we're getting there.
That's disgusting. Okay.
I know. Look, you don't even have to
love the analogies.
Yeah. Okay. So, let's all move past that. Tommy, can you give us a background and a professional background about yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I've been a software engineer for over 10 years now. I've been building on Solana for a little over 3 years, winning the first Solana DeFi hackathon with Sci Options. From there, kind of pivoted into structured products, launched a token, raised funds, set up entities, launched a token, did everything under the sun there, and then realized how much work it takes to launch a token, build a community around that token, build in tokenomics, governance. People say it's going to be autonomous, but it's not. There needs a lot of infrastructure to make that stuff autonomous and decentralized. So that kind of pivoted us to Armada about 12, 13 months ago. And so we're now kind of focusing on productizing a lot of that infrastructure to help teams take care of all things token so they can focus on the core product. So that's the very short version of where I came from and where we are today.
I feel like that is a common theme that we've been hearing, and even talking with Colin yesterday, is this theme of decentralization and what is actually decentralized. And you were the first person that I talked to who was kind of bringing this up and talking about this in public, how DAOs aren't actually decentralized. They're just they're just organizations. So
I got so much shit for trying to change the acronym from DAO to do. Like everyone's like, this is not catching on. I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, just say DAO, even though it's not autonomous. I'm like, oh crap. But it's not autonomous, and we've been busting our ass to try and make things autonomous and governance driven for a long time. We should have slapped a cool word like futarchy on it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So can you actually then dive into Armada a little bit? And I mean, let's just jump into the meat here. Let's talk about Armada. Let's talk about what it does and why you built it.
Yeah, so we focus on 3 verticals. The first is kind of token launching mechanisms. So we have different auction mechanisms for on-chain fair launches and price discovery, airdropping infrastructure. So teams can airdrop tokens. They can airdrop options on tokens if they want. They can airdrop locked or vested tokens even. So everything they need to kind of get token out there initially. And then the second vertical is on-chain liquidity. Once you have a token out there, you need good, robust liquidity so community members can get involved, acquire more if they want to, get out if they want to, etc. So we have a concentrated liquidity market making program where we partner with institutional market makers to actually manage that liquidity on behalf of community and users depositing. We have a bunch of different liquidity mining programs, from option-based liquidity mining to discount token liquidity mining, a new program that we're launching called liquidity bonds, you name it, a bunch of things that are just focused around like incentivizing good, robust on-chain liquidity. And then the third vertical is tokenomics and governance. This is, kind of the big thing that we really started on once we launched the Sci token was, we made the assumption that everything could be done through governance, but people don't participate in governance. VCs and others don't participate in governance. So how do you make tokenomics governance driven, decentralized, but governance light? And so we built a new staking contract that allows people to participate in governance while still receiving any sort of rewards shared with that program. And then the biggest one is our tokenomics automation program, which we call a demultiplexer for those who come from an engineering background. Basically, fees can feed into this single program, and organizations can configure their instance to distribute fees to different addresses or actions, like buying back and adding protocol-owned liquidity, or just transferring to a development fund, or distributing to stakers, or anything. So it's a very modular program and permissionless as far as like how tokens move through that program.
Talk to me a little bit about what this actually looks like in practice, right? Can you give me an example of one of the clients, maybe BONK? What are they doing with you guys, and how does it actually play out using your infra stack?
Yeah, so BONK, already having a token, already having good liquidity, they're really just focused on the tokenomics and governance aspect, as they want to get more community. Their focus is on community involvement and whatnot. So they're using that third vertical, staking, tokenomics, governance. And so I can't really talk too much about where they're going with all of it down the road, but I can tell you what they have to date. And so they launched their staking program, which has acquired probably 2.5%, I think, of total supply at this point. And then they're also using the demultiplexer, or the tokenomics program, to actually start taking in fees from the different community projects that are launching on BONK. So that way that instance can ingest all those fees and then distribute to the governance treasury, to stakers or whatnot. And as they add more products that are generating fees, rewards, whatever it is, they can just point it to this address, and the community gets to decide where those go. So that's kind of where BONK's using it.
Okay, so maybe could you dive into the demultiplexer a little bit, and maybe show us a diagram or something for us midcurves? It's easier to visualize,
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit easier to see than just word vomit. So I'm just going to show you kind of the original flow diagram that we were using to kind of show what this program can do. So we mentioned we have two programs right now, two primary programs in the tokenomics and governance vertical. The first one is a staking program that works well with SPL governance. So people still use Realms if they're using the governance part, still use Realms to look at proposals and actually vote on proposals. But we created a UI that teams can self-host, that allows them to actually just quickly white label a staking site and tokenomics site. And then, as mentioned, the demultiplexer. So this is the meat of automated tokenomics. You can have different programs or streams of fees feeding into a single address or instance of the demultiplexer. You just point it, you could just transfer from Phantom 2 or Backpack if you wanted, right into the demultiplexer. And then whatever weights are configured, it will actually distribute and handle splitting those tokens across the different actions, all the way through. So simple things like simple transfer to treasury deposit, rewarding stakers, buying and adding protocol and liquidity, buying and sending somewhere else. So here's a quick example of a group that may want to create a staking program and a demultiplexer instance that automatically just buys their token, and any tokens that the demultiplexer instance sees that is their token just gets sent and rewarded to stakers. And you could even have the throttle if you don't want, massive fee spikes and APY spikes in the staking. So fees come in from various programs. If it's coin, then it gets sent to stakers. If not, well, then it goes to the buy and send action, where it will buy coin and send coin back to the demultiplexer, which then just gets piped back to stakers. So it's very modular infrastructure to create all kinds of distributions You can configure it on a per mint. You can have default strategies. So any token that does not have a mint specific strategy, as we call it, goes through that default strategy. So it's really robust to make it hands off once set up, and then optionally governance driven if you have SPL governance as the authority over the distribution weights.
I mean, what really impresses me about it, the autonomy of the thing aside, is that it's a framework for slapping, utility onto nonsense, right? Like, what is BONK? It's kind of a joke asset, got distributed Christmas 2 years ago. And now it's generating fees, and those fees are sufficient enough incentive that 2.5% of the whole supply is locked up. That's kind of nuts, and that's a very powerful framework that you can just you can take a meme coin, and suddenly it's a much more serious project if you throw this sort of suit on top of it. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and that's where we really started. We didn't have meme coins in mind per se, but governance tokens without any real, atomic governance where votes actually lead to real actions, and those actions actually control the organization flow of funds. Well, they're all just memes and gimmicks if they don't have that. So in some sense, we had meme tokens in mind, but in some sense, we weren't focused on meme tokens.
Oh, I was muted. Cool. Can you maybe walk us through or show us some how this actually works? BONK, or you can show us with
I'll show a demultiplexer instance like the UI right now, actually, since this is one we're just iterating on. But so this only has a default strategy. If you had other mint specific strategies, it would show up here. But the goal is to make these flows very transparent, so community members can actually see how funds are flowing, where they're coming in from. This is just a very simple example. But yeah, so the whole goal is transparency, and then we want to make it so easy that people don't have to really understand how everything works. They can kind of drag and drop these components and then generate a proposal that will get posted to realms. So that way it's, truly community driven and not this complex hairball where people have to go and manually enter in all these little things. So that's one thing we're focused on. And then I guess quickly I'll show, the BONK site. So this is BONK rewards, Armada's UI. This has some custom tweaks to the UI, but the general framework is all the same. That most teams are using. And so it's just very simple. You can actually just claim rewards, withdraw your rewards, lock up tokens, set a specific multiplier, or set a duration to get a multiplier, etc. So it's very simple from the staking perspective. And then they have a demultiplexer that actually shows the funds, but its UI is very different than this is rudimentary one. So, but this kind of shows the strategy and how it's working. I don't know if you have any questions. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, well, Andrew, do you have any questions before I pop off?
No, I really can't overstate. I think this is hilarious. This is BONK. And you can.
Yeah, it's awesome. This is really cool.
Locks and multipliers. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Would there be any application for this for NFTs in the future?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of what we see is it's a very powerful community tool, right? Taking ownership over that. And we have SPL governance works with NFTs. So it just really depends on the flow of, this program works for SPL tokens and it takes a single mint. So it's not out of the box going to work for NFTs, but the same concepts wouldn't be hard to implement. It's just a little bit easier on fungible tokens.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've been thinking about that. Potentially we have an NFT.
Is this
project.
the big reveal? Are we gonna talk about it?
This is the moment.
No. This is not the moment. No, I would say theoretically, if there was an NFT coming, you know, I want to think about, I really want to think deeply about how to, you know, build a community and incentivize that community and get that community to actually be involved. Because in my experience, like you said, not a lot of people are involved in DAOs. It's great in theory and concept, but people are, in my opinion, humans are just lazy. And it's really hard to mobilize a community to participate in governance, right?
I think the biggest thing is, especially if they don't know what's in it for them, right? Like
Incentives.
tokenomics and organizations right now are like not very clear. But you know, if there's meaningful value flowing through some tokenomic system and governance gives those holders the ability to configure that, well, then you're probably going to be pretty incentivized to check out, you know, the proposals or even put one up yourself to influence how things work.
Yep. The best example of a DAO that I've seen has been Noun's DAO. Have you guys ever heard of them?
I've heard of them, but I haven't done.
Okay.
Haven't gotten
Yes.
involved.
Anyway, just kind of a side note, but I think that they have figured out how to get community involved really well. Like everyone, yeah, it's very interactive. But anyway, kind of a side note. Okay, so I guess since we're on the topic of community, you have been in Solana for quite some time, and you've seen, you know, you've been through the ups and downs. What, like, how do you build a community, and not just from like a technical perspective, but like, what are your thoughts around building a community, and getting them to participate, because it's a hard thing to do, right?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, maybe I can give you a lot of don'ts or, you know, hesitations. I don't think I've cracked
Yeah,
the code. You know,
give
building
us
my
some
strong
advice.
suit, right?
Yeah.
I can give you advice on what not to do or some things I've seen. But if I'm gonna theorize on it, I think, I mean, starting like 3 years ago in 2020, 2021, when, you know, everything was going crazy, like we're seeing it now again, like airdrop hunters, people flood new communities, new products that are launching. But it creates a ton of noise. And there's so many people that say they want to get involved, but they don't actually have the correct skill set to like solve good tasks or objectives. And it actually becomes a net drag on the organization. You spend more time dealing with Discord responses and emotional people that aren't actually generating any sort of value to the organization and community. So, you know, when I think about these governance things and community involvement and all that, I think, again, it goes back to like transparency and clarity. You kind of need to understand, what does governance contribute to, or what does governance control? Excuse me. What should governance not control? Things that are like need high frequency decisions, like governance should not control. Community should probably not control. Like core team maybe has that, or a sub DAO that has full autonomy over the day to day operational decisions on various items. So I think it really needs to be a very, very clear plan of, you know, these are the teams involved, these are community involvement, and this is who we need help from, how they can help, and like the expectations of that. So I think it just goes to like a very clear plan.
I do think that, like, you know, you've probably seen this multiple times given how long you've been around Solana. There is an element of it that seems like alchemy, right? When you're building community, sometimes there are these instances where it's just right place, right time. And I think all of Solana sort of saw that a few months ago, right? Suddenly out of nowhere, you know, Ansem's Telegram had 9,000 people in it. And that seemed to happen in like a month. And it just coincided with this huge rush of liquidity. Like, I'm wondering, you know, how many times have you sort of seen it before where, you know, lightning just sort of strikes? And is there any way to quantify that or capture that, do you think?
That is a really good question. I mean, it definitely is, you know, a little bit of preparation and then a good bit of right time, right place. And some may call that luck. Some may call that, you know, more preparation. But it's, you know, it's tough. I really don't have, I really can't quantify that. I mean, you've seen people that have been building to the bear, and they're finally building, you know, large communities, and you see others who've been focused on like ourselves, like infrastructure and all that, not so much community building. And like we haven't really generated a large community, but you know, or I guess at the moment haven't been trying to. So yeah, no, it's not a good answer. I can't really quantify. I just think it goes with the market. It really does.
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, if you hack it, let me know, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. We're working on that ourselves over here. Okay,
I'll be right there with you soon.
Yes, sir. Let's talk about like the future, or let's talk about the future a little
Actually,
bit.
wait, let me ask you a question if you don't mind. Do you have your goals of like what kind of community you're trying to build and like what you want community to contribute?
Yes, I do. So Andrew and I at the foundation, we work on, kind of two different things. And so I'll speak for myself here, and then Andrew, maybe you can answer on more of like the governance and DAO side of things. For me, yes, I have goals and strategy and all that written out for what I am trying to build, and then I have essentially a step-by-step process on how to do that, or how I think I can do that. So I guess I'm not going to go into a long form answer here. But my short answer is yes, there are goals, and yes, there are processes and things in place to build this. Let's just go with that. Nice. Andrew, maybe you can dive deeper into like the governance side of things.
Yeah, I mean, well, just speaking from the podcast too, I think we sort of jokingly started this because there's too many fucking gigabrains on Solana.
Yeah.
We need a space where, the podcast isn't talking about like parallel execution or some nonsense that nobody understands except for like the 3 people listening. But like Solana also has a lot of culture and community, and we wanted to, have a space to foster that.
Yes.
I think like, go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, take that. I'd love to hear the follow-up before I start talking governance.
No, okay. No, I was gonna say that I think that Andrew hit on something there, which is that Solana has it does have culture. Like people say, oh, it's not as cultured as ETH is, or whatever culture means, right? But I think that Solana has internet culture, and we all exist on the internet, right? And we've adopted this internet culture, pretty heavily. And I think that there's probably 20%, it's kind of like a Pareto principle thing. There's probably like 20% of people in Solana, maybe even less, that actually understand what's going on behind the scenes, or they understand, what Mert's saying when he's, roasting people on Twitter. I think people retweet it, but they have no idea what he's saying most of the time when you actually talk to people. But I think that there's 80%. So I think there's 80% of people in crypto, maybe higher, that are just here for the lulz, that are here to have fun, that are here to make money, and they really want to know 2 things. In all my years of crypto, talking to people and talking to normies, I found that people really want to know, how do I make money, and is it safe? Like, am I going to get rugged? Those are like the 2 main things, right? I don't think people, if we're being real, I don't think people really care about decentralization. Most people, I think there are this small group of people in crypto who are like true believers and believe in decentralization, governance, and all that. But I think the average normie Coinbase holder does not care about decentralization. And I know this because I get texts from people all the time just talking about which bags to buy. So I think personally, if you need more of those people. Like, you need retail in this game, right? We can't be trading this hot bag of money, around like just the new project, like the same VCs, the same people all the time. You can't keep it inside this little bubble. Otherwise, it's never going to grow. So my goal here is to bring in a community from the outside of normies, explain things like we're 5 all the time, make it fun, and build a community around that. Because that's the 80% of people, or maybe even higher, like I said. So that's kind of the goal of like the podcast and what we're doing with Midcurve and all that. I guess long answer, but yeah.
Yeah. Now, your point on the decentralization hits home. I mean, like, when I first started, I was like decentralization, trustlessness, like maxi. And then you kind of realize that people just want something that works and is easy to use. Like, that's That's the
They just
end
don't
of
care.
the end of the day. They don't care. No one's actually validating, that kind of stuff. No real users are validating that stuff. And so, yeah, I think that's definitely something that like has changed our product focus and engineering focus. Is you can make some trade-offs for usability over decentralization.
Yeah. And that was like a hard pill for me to swallow at the beginning, because when I came into crypto, it was, more or less for the ideology, right? Trustless, decentralized, but then the more you're in it, you just realize, okay, that's not what most people are in it for. We're here to make money, if we're being real. And so what helped me was I just started compartmentalizing things. Okay, I have like, this thing for that kind of ideology, and I have this side of things, which is let's have fun and like try to make money on this BONK bag. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's the same thing too. Like at the end of the day, people want to they're here for money. I mean, volatility, money, it all goes hand in hand. So that's kind of sometimes that's kind of been our focus too on like some of the new stuff we've been launching and the concentrated liquidity market making. Like there's some trust given to the market maker that is managing that liquidity, but at the end of the day, because there's some trust and they can run models off chain, they can do a better job. So that's really all that matters.
That's right. Andrew, did you want to say something about governance?
No, I think it's very similar to a lot of the themes that you guys touched on. I sort of approach governance. I look at something like the framework you built at Armada or Futarchy. These are very good and elegant solutions to problems that I don't know actually should be solved. I think when you start to think about, what is the greatest example of public goods governance out there, the thing that comes to my mind is school board meetings. A bunch of weirdos and idiots yelling at each other about like banning books or something. And it's always really intense. It's always strange. It's this mix of folks, but it's because the stakes are high. This is where sort of values are determined. This is where a lot of personal stake in the future is sort of set out. And so I think Solana's traditionally lacked a lot of that, this kind of really intense forum debate. There just isn't the same degree of buy-in. There's no trolls. There's no governance trolls. Where's our Christmas? Like nobody cares enough to even make fun of the thing, which is very funny to me. And so I guess, how do you bring some of that energy and like start from zero and get that motion started? And I guess in some ways, actually, what you're building at Armada could work well with that. If by staking in governance, you can earn some yield on some of the trading pools or whatever it may be, maybe just that little level of incentive is what brings up the total amount of engagement entire.
Well, I think it's what you were talking about, like engagement, right? Well, like to have engagement, you need to have a vested interest. And like, as most of these tokens, like they're governance tokens, but what are they governing? Like nothing. So like, why do I care to participate? Why do I care to have meaningful conversations if it's just going to fall on, deaf ears that aren't like listening, like aren't going to take any action? So it's really about that transparency of the value of the system and giving control of, more control of that system to the community. And hopefully that sparks more engagement. I definitely have spent more time focusing on the, automation and decentralization, like from an infrastructure standpoint, just considering like launching a token and thinking about governance and everything that's needed to make it truly decentralized, where the organization is controlled by others and the value, what the token actually has and does is controlled by others. So it's definitely where my focus is. But it's interesting that you're talking about like more of the forum debate discussion, like which I view, you kind of have all that discussion and then it leads into more actionable proposals. So do you have? I'm curious, like if you're still in the early phases of like thinking through that, or if you have ideas of like what the ecosystem could do to kind of get more just conversations happening.
I mean, it does seem like a start from zero issue, right? Like when you look at something like Cosmos, I don't. It's not the kind of thing you want to totally replicate, right? Because there's a lot of grandstanding, there's a lot of posturing, there's a lot of net negative participants in there. But just the sheer level of engagement is amazing. I think that's what stewardship of digital public goods, right? Think about something like a lending market. There's a good chance that might outlive us, and the reserve ratios or something, like keeping that protocol healthy and having that as a resource that's publicly available long after you're gone. I think that like there are people who are thinking in that sort of long scale and really want to sort of take care of the programs that they use every day. And take care of this future financial infrastructure. But there's not a lot of them. And how do we get more of them?
That's where I think
I don't have the question. I don't have the answer to that, but I know they exist, and it's a matter of like going out and finding them. And I'm definitely trying to get them into Jito Governance, but there's also this question of how do you make more of them?
So
I mean, go ahead, Justin.
I was just going to ask really quickly, talking about the Jito Governance thing, Andrew. Have you been encouraged by it? Because I listened to a few of the spaces we've done that you were leading, and I felt kind of encouraged by how many people applied to be delegates and how many people were actually interested. And that's the first time I've ever seen, kind of that many people in person. That was the first time I've seen that many people actually like somewhat interested, and serious people too, that were interested in this. Again, it's not a lot of people in the grand scheme of things. So your question, the question comes back to how do you find more of these people and how do you get them interested? But I want to turn the question to you and say, and ask, were you, inspired by what we've done so far?
I mean, sure, but it was excellent turnout. We've got some incredible names and voices in there, and it does seem to be people who are inspired both by the project itself and also what we're trying to do in governance. It's people who, I think Jito is very good at like smart people sort of. It's like a fire in a dark, right? People just tend to go to it. If you're a certain type of person who wants to be around other smart people, you're going to walk towards that fire. And so that was great to see. And I think it was added to the fact that, we sort of made it clear from the outset, we're trying to build something different in terms of how governance usually works, and a little bit more engaged, a little bit more active. But it's still step one. I'm trying to figure out how to, the Jito Foundation had to delegate a lot of token voting power just to reach quorum. How do we make ourselves retroactively obsolescent? How do we get rid of ourselves in this process? I think it takes a lot, and you have to build a kind of momentum. It's kind of daunting to think about, but like we took the first step, which I feel really good about.
He's not settling. He's not satisfied. He's not settling. That's all I heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a long road ahead. One step up. This is where I think a lot of the stuff we've been building helps solve some of those problems. Because again, you have these foundations that are obscure. There's some team working on it. They have a bag of tokens, but an outsider who didn't get the airdrop, who didn't get liquidity mining rewards, who didn't get involved early enough, what's going to bring them in? If there's no transparency around what the token does and how they can participate and how they can get rewarded for their participation and actually, I'm not saying replace their jobs, but be a part-time contributor without having to actually be an employee or contractor of an entity, you're not going to get anywhere. It's just going to be the same core people. And when those core people go away, then it's going to fizzle out. So that's where I think the transparency around tokenomics, I think the transparency and governance decision around flow of funds, funding different sub DAOs that have, you know, their own autonomy from different day-to-day operations, is the way to get there. You know, obviously the devil's in the details on this. Like you can boil it down to some thesis that sounds easy, but you know, we've been kind of wanting to get to that goal for the last 2 years, but you know, Realms was in its infancy. There's been a lot of infrastructure on that. The delegation program is, you know, still getting better because there's been issues, you know, around the original implementation and what it was used for versus what people were hoping. So there's definitely ways to go, but I think there's a lot of little pieces moving in the right direction.
Yep. I think we're actually coming up on time here. So this was actually a pretty insightful conversation. I like that it was more of a conversation than like question and answer, right? That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So is there, last thing, is there anything you want to say or any message you want to get out there before we go?
Yeah, just check out Armada. We've been working with the market maker for the last month and seeing great strategies coming out of that on a few different pairs, and we'll be ramping that up. And if you're a team that's looking to launch token, looking to get more liquidity on that token, or you know, interested in governance and tokenomics and truly getting to autonomy, then definitely reach out. We're still early, but we have a lot of infrastructure that teams can use.
Yeah, I'll just toss it out there for farmers too. It might be worth keeping an eye on this one. A lot of these pools they have on there, still relatively low liquidity. You can take a big chunk of it, and the returns, if you look at them, I don't know who the market maker you're working with is, but those are healthy looking. It's worth a look if you like farming fees.
Yeah, Vol's been up in the last day or two, and they're the primary market maker right now is and the lead trader is Vol Trader. So he knows how to manage these pools very well.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for coming on, Tommy. I always appreciate it. Can't wait to hang out again in person, maybe at Breakpoint.
Maybe sooner, hopefully. Although now, you know, we're across the country. I don't know. It's gonna be tough.
Yeah. You moved away from me. It makes me sad, but that's okay.
I know. All right. Appreciate you guys having me.